Hello fellow orchid lovers, it's Danielle here with a video about how I fertilize my orchids. I wanted to just share my collection, where they are growing, because I very rarely do that, if ever. I realize that it's not really going to be incredibly visible to you because of the backlighting from the window, but I just wanted to share with you all of my beautiful blooms right now. Usually in the morning I get up and I sit with my cup of coffee and just look at the sheer beauty before me. I'm so thrilled. Last year at this time my collection was not doing anywhere near this well. So I'm really excited that it's doing so well now, because it's just a sign that I'm finally figuring out what works in my environment, what works for my growing conditions, you know, what it is that I can do to make these plants happy and keep growing. I have a spike coming up there. Let me see what else I've got that I can show you. I'm going to try to do this with the light. That's my new orchid, which I think the tag is wrong. The tag that it says it's a wildcat bobcat, but I don't think that's what it is. I think I got the wrong tag when I purchased it. And there's my Latoria back there, Nora Takanaga. I just said that wrong. It's the morning, so I have trouble wrapping my mouth around words in the morning. So that's my main growing space, and I realize that it's going to get very hard for you to see because it's dark. That window faces south, so as the sun is coming this way, this window gets very, very bright light. So right now it doesn't, but in the afternoon, around noon, the light starts to come through that window, and then it stays bright until about 7:30 at this point. So they do get a lot of afternoon sun. So I'm just gonna pan over here, try not to trip on any dogs because they like to lay exactly where I'm gonna walk. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Rory. So I try not to step on her. And then I'll bring you over. I'm gonna have to talk pretty loud because foolishly I put my dishwasher on right as I was about to start filming. So this is where my Miltoniopsis live. This window stays very cool during the day. Even on hot days it stays very cool, and it only gets direct sunlight for about an hour right before the sun is setting. So they get a lot of bright light throughout the day, but nothing direct until like about an hour before sunset, and then they get some filtered direct sun. So these are my new babies, as you know. My new Miltoniopsis, and then my Andrea West is opening, and I realized I'm probably gonna have trouble viewing that. But to say that I love this flower is to put it very, very mildly indeed. And she doesn't come through as yellow in the video as she really is, but she is stunning. So I absolutely love her. Alright, so we're going to pan over, and then I'm going to show you where the rest of them grow. So we have this up here, and then the ones in flower are down here. So I have my Atroviolacea, a lot of backlight, sorry. My Unicum back there, my microchip here, and then my Shelob Tulkin is usually in that big window that I showed you, and when she's in bloom I pull her down and I keep her where I can see her because she is officially my favorite orchid, so I do want to see her. I don't want her hidden in the back of a shelf somewhere. Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly show you, hopefully quickly, what I do to fertilize my orchids. And I'm going to try to gather my thoughts and speak intelligently, but Well, fingers crossed. We'll see how this goes. I did write down some notes so that if I forget something, I can try to remember. So the first thing that you want to keep in mind is that your environment is special to you. And what I mean by that is if you try to fertilize your orchids based on what I do, it's not going to be the best thing for your plants because your environment is different than mine. Also, your growing method is probably different than mine. I grow hydroponically, and the things that I'm going to share with you can be transferred to that method of growing, but you have to understand that my orchids are always exposed to water, and your orchids are going to be exposed to water filtered through bark or moss or whatever the case may be. So you have to keep that in mind when you decide how you're going to fertilize your orchids. If you're looking for a quick answer, use this product done. This is not the video for you because I am going to explain why I use what I use. The last video that I posted on fertilizing was back in December, and I had one gentleman comment that it was too complicated and he had to stop watching it. So if you just want me to recommend a product to you, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you what I do and why I do it. And this is well over a year worth of tweaking and watching other people's videos. Rick L is a huge, I can't emphasize enough, watch his videos. It'll put your thought process of how to feed your orchids into a whole nother level. So, you know, I didn't come across this by chance. This is over a year worth of me tweaking things and changing things and finding something that actually really does have results. I've seen the results. I mean, I just showed you all those flowers that are in bloom. Some of them I can't take credit for because I just bought them, but that's only like a couple out of all the ones that are there. And the year before this, that was not the case. I was really struggling. So I finally found, oh, it's getting dark. That's lovely. Sorry, it's getting darker in here. I finally found something that works for me, and I'm going to share that with you. So again, you want to take your environment and your growing method into a strong amount of consideration when you decide what products you're going to use, all those things. Okay, I use distilled water. So your water is going to be the first thing that you're going to decide what you're going to do. Water is the base of what you're going to put in it. So that's why I use distilled water. I do have an RO unit that I've had for over a year, and I have not hooked up yet, which is really stupid. But I have had other things, more important things to deal with. So I've just been buying distilled water. And the reason that I do that is I was using tap for the first, I would say, year and a half, or no, probably more like just a year. And I realized that I cannot control what's in my tap water. I don't know what nutrients are in there. At any given time, the TDS, which is the total dissolved solids, and the pH are a variable that I cannot control, and I don't know what those variables are. So I decided to switch to distilled water because this is a baseline of nothing. There's no nutrients, it's got a neutral pH, so, or close to neutral pH. So that's why I go with distilled water, and then I add my nutrients to that. If you're going to use tap water, or you're going to use RO water, or you're going to use all those things, you need to figure out how that's going to affect what you use to fertilize your orchids. You also need to keep in mind that if you're using tap water, you're not going to know what's in the water. So that's the reason why I switched to distilled. But again, you can do whatever it is that you desire. And then the other thing that you need to realize is that plants absorb nutrients at different pH levels. So personally, the whole pH thing drives me crazy. I have a pH meter, but it is very unreliable. I do recalibrate it pretty frequently to make sure that I'm getting a good reading. At this point, I don't technically need to use it because I know what amounts I use of the different things that I do use, and so I know what the pH is going to come out to be based on a known variable with known variables added. So I don't really use this that frequently, but if you are going to be using tap water or something that you don't know what the pH is, you should probably invest in one of these meters. And while you're at it, get the calibrating solution, because you're going to need to recalibrate it every so often. So speaking of pH, if you look up online a pH nutrient graph, you're going to see that at different pH levels, different nutrients are available to the plant. So there's this magic number of 5.8 pH that most nutrients are available to your plants. And so a lot of growers strive for that 5.8. And if you're growing in bark or moss and they're just getting the water poured onto them, then that's probably something that will work for you. But for my growing methods, because I'm in hydroponics, my orchids the bottoms of their roots sit in water, and over the week that it takes for me to refresh the water, I refresh the water every week, the pH is dropping. So I start off at a certain pH and the pH starts to drop as the water evaporates, etc. So I start at a higher pH than most people would. I usually start at like a 6.5, 6.6. And that's so that they can get the nutrients on the higher level of the pH scale. And then as the pH is dropping during the week, they're getting the nutrients available at the lower end of the pH scale. So that's something you want to keep in mind for your growing method. If you're growing and you feel that your plants are nutrient deficient on some type of nutrient, find out at what pH that nutrient is available and then try to fertilize at that pH, and you'll see a difference in the absorption of the nutrients. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about is the type of nitrogen that you choose to use. So there's 3 types of nitrogen available. There's a nitrate nitrogen, an ammoniacal nitrogen, and a urea nitrogen. So I choose to use a nitrate nitrogen. And the reason why I do that is because I live in a cooler environment. My orchids never get past 80 degrees. The ammoniacal and the urea need to get up in the higher temperatures in order for the bacteria to break these down and make them available to your plants. And if they don't break down, then they could burn your roots. So for the longest time, I was using an ammoniacal nitrogen source. And I was burning my roots, and I didn't understand why, because I was doing very, very small quantities of fertilizer when I first started off. I mean, small, tiny quantities, and my roots were burning, and I couldn't understand why. And then I watched a video from Rick L, and he explained about the different types of nitrogen, and so I switched to a nitrate nitrogen because it doesn't need those higher temperatures to break down, and it does not burn my roots. Now, nitrogen is not the only type of nutrient that you need, obviously. Everyone knows the 3, N, P, K, but they also need micronutrients. So if you're going to choose a fertilizer, it's not just important that you know what type of nitrogen you're getting, but it's also important that if it doesn't have micronutrients, if it's just the NPK, you have to make sure you then get a supplemental fertilizer with micronutrients, and that's what I do. So my main fertilizer is this. It's a Kaol Nitrate mix, and it's just the Kaol Nitrate, and you can see the granules here. So I literally just take a tiny pinch of this and put it in my distilled water. Okay? Because this is it's pretty strong stuff, and I try to fertilize around 130, 150 TDS. So as you're adding things, your TDS is going up. So I add just a pinch of this to my distilled water, and in my case, that is enough, you know, for a gallon. But then this is just the Kaol Nitrate, so then I need those micronutrients. So I have this product, which also has micronutrients. Okay, so it doesn't have very much nitrogen, but that's okay because I'm getting it from this product right here. So it has all these micronutrients available, so I add these 2 together. Okay, Now also, especially in the growing season, your plants need a lot of calcium. Calcium helps the new growths to push on nice and strong. I was having a problem with my new growths being kind of wimpy. Like they were growing, but they weren't growing, you know, and I couldn't understand why. At first I just thought, okay, well maybe I put the plants through some shock, blah, blah, blah. And then I realized that I wasn't really giving them a strong source of calcium. I mean, they get calcium in here and there's a little bit in here, but during the growing season, like that's their building block to make their new growths. And so I purchased a Kaol Mag mix, and I add this as well. Okay, so these are the three primary things that I started to use, and I put them in little dispensers because there's a little eyedropper in here, so it's easier than using this bottle. So I put this in here, and then I just use the dropper to put as many drops as I'd like into my mix. And I don't feel like I have to share with you how much I do of each, because again, your growing environment is going to be different than mine. I'm just trying to show you the types of products that you can use to figure out a formula that will work for you and your plants. And then the other thing that I just recently started doing, and I am so excited by the results, is I bought liquid seaweed. And none of these brands, I'm not recommending any of these brands in particular. This is just something that I purchased. So this particular product does have some nitrogen and some phosphate and some potash, but it's really the hormones. And Rick did a recent video on hormones, and it makes so much sense. And I had already planned on this video when he did that video, and I had promised my subscribers that I would do this video, but he really breaks down the type of hormones that are released in order to encourage leaf growth, in order to encourage root growth, in order to encourage new growths. So he breaks it down a little more. I'm not going to go into all that because I don't want to speak on a subject that I haven't done as much. He's obviously done a ton of research on that. So anyways, this product I started using, I would say probably about 3 to 4 months ago, and the response has been insane. My new growths are so strong. My plants that I was not expecting spikes from are all of a sudden putting out spikes. They have responded instantly to this product. So I highly recommend that if you are going to do, you know, your own nutrient blend, that you do include some type of liquid kelp, liquid seaweed, you know, not large quantities. They don't need a ton of this, like a few drops in your routine, especially during the growing season, when they are putting forth those new growths and they need the hormones to tell them what to do. So I started adding that product, and I've seen huge results. So I'm just going to show you basically what I mean by huge results. So this is a very pitiful piece of my first Sherry baby. So my first Sherry baby, I found out way too late that she had Fusarium. And I am going to do another video on Fusarium, so I can tell you what I do to treat it. But I found out too late that she had it. So there were a few new growths on the back end of her that I took off and tried to save. So this is a new growth that I saved. I mean, you can tell it's pitiful. I don't know why I tried, but I did. And as you can see, she did try. I mean, she was putting out new growths. They were struggling until she finally got, you know, a root system. So she put this new growth out first. As you can see, she didn't have any roots, so we have those accordion leaves. And then she threw out this new growth, and again, not much bigger than that one. And at this point, she had a lot of roots. So I was like, what the heck? Why isn't this plant getting bigger new growths? And then I started doing the liquid seaweed right as this new growth was forming. So as you can see, the liquid seaweed, the new growth at first was getting those accordion leaves again. But as soon as I started doing the liquid seaweed, look at how strong this new growth is getting. The new leaves that it's pushing out You know, the tips that were there when she was first starting are still a little wrinkled, but look at the response that she has had to my new fertilizing regimen. And then you have this one over here that just started, and she has no wrinkled leaves at all. So as you can see, this new growth is going to be significantly larger than the older ones. And I have another one to show you. This is my second cherry baby that I purchased, also had Fusarium. When I purchased her, I pulled her apart. I got rid of a lot of the bulbs because a lot of them were too heavily infected with Fusarium for me to save them. So I really just saved anything that was just semi-infected or not infected at all that I could see. So it was these two pseudobulbs that I saved. They put out this new growth, and you know, I mean, the poor thing went through hell. So a new growth that's smaller is not that big of a deal, but it you know, it was kind of flimsy. But now, ever since I started doing the seaweed, look at that response. I mean, obviously going to be a lot bigger than this one, may even rival the size of these two. So I have noticed a response. I have. Like I said, I've been doing it for about 3 to 4 months now, and I've noticed a difference. And I don't think that it is just that the season's changing, because I have to tell you, I'm keeping it pretty cold in my house. I mean, I'm leaving the windows open at night, and I know I'm risking losing some blooms, but I'm letting it get pretty cold in my house. It drops down into the low 60s. Even like one time it was 58 degrees. So they're not thinking, oh, it's warm, it's growing season. Not yet. So these new growths, I don't think that it's just based on the fact that the orchids know spring is here. I think at least part of it is the fact that I finally found a formula that gives them the balanced diet and the hormones that they need for them to now flourish. You know, I took you in to see my window. I mean, I showed you mostly flowers. I'll go back over there again. I showed you mostly flowers. Again, try not to step on the puppies. But look at all the green growth too. I mean, it's I know it's hard for you to see, but look at all that green growth. My Phalaenopsis are not losing leaves. It used to be that, you know, they would lose a leaf and then they grow two. They're not even doing that. I mean, they are just... I'm sorry, I'm trying to get a good... I mean, they're so healthy. The root growth. Look at those roots on that plant. I mean, just crazy, crazy amounts of growth. Some of them are blooming. Some of them aren't. But even the ones that aren't blooming are in great shape. The green growth on these plants is just amazing. They are responding to this formula that I'm using. So again, I'm not telling you exactly what I do, but I'm telling you the type of products that I use. It's way too dark, I'm sorry. I'm telling you the products that I use so that you can get an idea for what you would like to do for your plants. And this is not based on me being a scientist or knowing anything about, you know, that kind of stuff. It's just me observing my plants and seeing the difference in their growth pattern, seeing this year as opposed to last year, the huge difference in my new growths, the huge difference in the green growth, the ability to maintain green growth and not lose leaves or roots. It's a huge, huge difference. So I hope that was helpful to some of you. I realized it was a long video, and it's kind of a little repetitive of the video I posted back in December with the addition of, you know, the seaweed that I'm using now. If you have any questions, please let me know. I will try to answer them to the best of my intelligence. Yeah, so I hope you're all having a great day, and I will talk to you all next time.